So we're going to jump right in. This is all about how we can tie together the essentials of personalized learning and how what the role that AI can play in that in a bigger picture. And I think that this is an area in which we're going to emerge very, very quickly as a active user of AI. I think it solves a lot of our problems. I've done this presentation in Arizona and North Dakota, a version of this. And I think it all comes back to the idea of we know that students do the best, that we experience the best learning outcomes when students have access to support. Unfortunately, in education today, many of us find ourselves with classes of 30, 35, 40 students. And in an hour a day, that's just not enough time for any teacher to provide truly personalized learning for their students in everything that entails, right? We're not able to actively give feedback on everything for every student. And so we end up limiting ourselves and doing the best that we can. It becomes more of a triage than actually, addressing every student's need. And I've come across the different AI platforms, and I really truly feel like our best hope of making a personalized connection with every student and getting every student the personalized assistance that they need, that's only going to be possible if we utilize AI. And when I say we, I'm talking every level of the educational institution. This is not something that's just for a subset of people. Our administrators should be familiar with it and using it. Our teachers should be familiar with it and using it. And our students should absolutely be familiar with it and using it. I was in a training yesterday with Solution Tree, and one of the statistics that came out is they said by 2027, the third most asked for skill in the job market is going to be AI use. That it's careers are going to require this it's going to be a necessity for our students that are graduating, our students that are freshmen now, that are graduating in 2027. So this is something that's only going to become more and more common. And I feel like if we're not modeling and using it with the students and teaching them the right and the wrong and the how and the why, they're not going to learn it anywhere else. And it's not going to give them the job skills they're going to need when they go out on their own. So the first part of this is just simply going to focus on how teachers can use it. And the great part about this for teachers is it's not going to make a good teacher bad or a bad teacher good. AI will never replace the teacher for many different reasons. I think the number one is as a human, we can make connections to students in a way that AI can't. It's that personal connection, right? The empathy. But there's so many ways that we can use the AI to kind of automate a lot of our routine tasks, make our jobs easier. In education, every year we have one more thing added to our plate. Sometimes it's every day we have one more little thing added to our plate. And so if we can use AI, leverage it to just take one thing a day off our plate or to take a 20-minute thing and make it a 5-minute thing, I think that this is a huge benefit to teachers, and it allows us to spend more time focusing on the actual students. So one of the areas that teachers can use it in is lesson planning. And one of the great things I think about when I talk about AI is the fact that it can be a very simple thing, one part of your lesson once a week. Or if you're in a situation, maybe you're a brand new teacher and you are just in survival mode and you need the help, AI can be there for that too. It can fill any of the areas where you need the assistance. I believe on the right side of the screen, I've listed kind of 4 AIs that are specifically designed for teachers to use in the education sphere. And the first one there is Conmigo. The second one, I believe, is I got to drag there we go. I had everybody's faces covering it. So Magic School, Eduaid, Brisk Teaching. These are the 4 that I've come across that I think that most of the educators I deal with are exploring, using, and incorporating into their own teaching. So I'm not going to go into each one. If you feel like diving in and exploring any of them, I'm going to kind of go over kind of some of the different things that they can do as a whole. Each one provides most of these activities. But I think one of the things that I use it for most frequently is just brainstorming. Maybe I've taught the same lesson 2 or 3 years in a row, and I know that last year it just didn't work. I'll just drop in what I did before and then what I'm looking to do this year and ask it for 3 or 4 or 5 different ideas. And that's the great part about this is if you're really stuck on an idea for an activity, or you don't know how to teach something, or what you want your students to get out of the activity, you can drop that in there and ask it for 10 ideas, and it will generate 10 ideas. And then you can go through and you can pick the one that would be best for your need or your students, or the activity that fits your content. So I really love it for using with activities, instead of maybe like a whole lesson plan, just like chunks of it, right? I have 15 minutes. I want my kids up and walking around doing something where they're interacting with each other. What do I do for that? Boom, drop it in Chat GPT, Conmigo, any of these other ones, and you'll easily be able to get a bunch of ideas for activities. The other cool part I think is, and this is where it truly is, I think, the greatest thing to ever come in, for our special education population. Not every kid reads at the same level in my class. Yet I'm normally only given a set of documents or a set of resources, and those are written at that level. And for me to go through and rewrite them to another level, either higher or lower, it's going to take a significant amount of time. We can now generate original resources, and we can level existing resources to meet the needs of our students where they're at. If I have a class of ninth graders, I can level it up to, a college level writing, or I can lower it down to the fifth grade writing to meet my students where they are. And again, this is a great example of personalizing the learning for the student. You're really meeting them where they're at in their learning journey. Rubrics. One of the things that I found most helpful in my own education career is giving a student a rubric. Even when I'm doing something myself, I say, hey, give me a rubric. I want to know what I'm aiming for. I want to know what a good, what does a proficient look like? What does mastery look like? And so to create those for every assignment or every standard, depending on how you're doing your grading, it's very, very time takes a ton of time. In this case, you can just have them generate a rubric in any of these apps. They'll generate a rubric for you in seconds. You just tell it what you want. And then if it's not perfect, you can either have it regenerate another one and you can refine your prompt, or you can just copy and paste it into a Word document or a Google Doc and edit from there, and tailor it to your needs. Quizzes and assessments. I love creating a bank of questions, right? I want to have 10 or 15 questions that I can pull from to assess a student on anything. I don't have the creativity or the time to make massive question banks. But now with any of these AI apps, I can just dump in, here's my standard, here's what I want my kids to learn, here's how I want them to show it to me. Create me a set of questions. If I want short answer, if I want essay questions, if I want multiple choice, true, false, it can create massive test banks for me very quickly. But then I can edit or pick and choose from to improve the bank that I have. One of the areas that I've always struggled with as a teacher is writing objectives, standards, and essential questions. I've never felt confident. I've never felt good about it. Now, with the use of AI, I can just ask it, give me 2 or 3 examples, and then I kind of pick whichever one I like the best and work, edit that one a little bit. Sometimes I'll ask it to combine all 3. But as you're exploring AI, understand that it's each time you interact with AI, it's a conversation. And you can just keep having that conversation, and you can extend that conversation to get more and more information and to provide more and more clarity. And eventually it will get better and better at talking to you, and it will provide responses that are even more tailored to what you're looking for. One of the other things I came across, and it's one of my favorites, it's called CurryPod. I put it in here for interactive presentations. I love using Pear Deck and Nearpod. They're great apps. Unfortunately, I don't have the time a lot of times to build out these extensive interactive presentations in those 2 applications. CurryPod does it for me. I just tell them what I'm teaching and how many, what kind of interactivity I want. It generates everything. The kids can log into it and they can follow along with me. They can answer questions live in the presentation. So if you haven't used it, I highly recommend CurryPod as an interactive presentation developer. When you log in, it looks really simple and very elementary. If you've never used it, like you're like, oh, this would be great for elementary school. But I can tell you, I've used it a bunch with my high school students, and once you start using it, it looks better it looks more adult than originally when you first log in. The other thing that I love using it for is creating choice boards and multiple pathways for students to learn. And this could either be multiple different assessment types, this could be multiple different resources for students to gather the content and learn it. Uh, but just basically building in that student choice and student agency into what you're doing, it takes an immense amount of time to build personalized pathways for students. And not a lot of teachers have the freedom and flexibility in their schedule to sit down and really plan out pathways or to plan out multiple types of assignments. It's not that the teachers don't have the capability, it's a time issue. This is where I believe that the AIs that are out there can truly help. I know that Magic School and Eduade both have this built in. So if you're looking to save time, it's a great opportunity to provide a more personalized learning for your student without taking a ton of your time as the teacher. And again, hopefully, you're seeing that a lot of this is teacher use, but the application of it is allowing for more agency from our students and more choice, building into that personalized learning. One of the other things, again, students always ask me. I do the AP classes a lot to college students, and they're really concerned with that A, right? They want to know what they need to do to get the A on the assignment, the perfect score. And just telling them or giving them the rubric isn't enough for some of these students. So one of the great things that all of these apps provide, at least Khanmigo, Magic School, and Eduade, is the idea of creating exemplars and non-exemplars. If you have your rubric, you can drop in your rubric to either of any of these apps and tell it, I would like an exemplar of level 3 on this rubric, and it will write you what would be a level 3. Or you could be like, you know what, write me an example of what's a level 1. And that way students can see what are good and bad examples of what that assignment should look like. And this leads to a lot of really great student reflection. Students can write theirs, then you give them one that would be, say, a proficient on your rubric, and they can look and compare and contrast theirs to the example. And it leads to some really great reflection on the student end of what they did well and also what they didn't do well. And then there's so many different areas you could go into beyond that into student reflection, either that personal conversations with the student, some sort of reflection activity to really deepen the learning and make it more personal for that student. And then the last one, image creation. What we're capable of now with Midjourney, DALL-E, Ideogram, the ability to create images that are perfect for your presentation. As we have students starting to develop more and more presentations, whether it's you as the teacher or the student, or maybe you're an administrator and you're preparing some sort of presentation for your staff, this is something where you can now create a custom image that is perfectly matched to the content that you're doing. So I think it's a great tool to use to really make presentations better in whatever capacity it is, whether it's, a one pager or a full on PowerPoint presentation. So there's just some tips that for the teacher side. The next one we're going to look at is how we can basically automate our routine tasks. I think this is so important as far as saving time. And I think this is an area in which we need to be doing a better job of working with our students on, because I think a lot of these automating of routine tasks are going to be the skills that our students are going to need 5 years from now in the workforce. And the more of these we can work with them on and show them how they can use them, it's just going to build that college and career readiness that we're looking for in our students. So one of the great things, translating. I work at a school where a significant amount of our parent population doesn't speak English, or English is their second language. Sorry about the bells, everybody. I am at school today. Translation. We have had Google Translate for a significant amount of time, but really, these AIs are significantly better at translating than Google Translate ever was. Templates. If there's things that you're using all the time as a teacher, worksheets, subplans, surveys, questionnaires, anything like that, you can automate a lot of that and have it make one template for you that you can change just a few things and keep using over and over and over again. Student Jesus Menke. Hold on, everybody. Just 1 second. Okay. Emails. I find that I send a lot of the same email over and over and over again. Well, you can have the AI write a generic email You can then copy and paste that into your Google Mail or your, if you're using Microsoft Outlook, and you can save it as a template that you can just kind of keep using over and over and over again. I mean, I say you're emailing parents about student attendance. Email looks the same almost every time. It's just a different student name, a different number of absences or tardies. Automate that. Newsletters. Whether you're an elementary school teacher and you just want to send it home to the parents, or whether your school you want to send it out to parents or the community, it takes a long time to generate the newsletter. AI can help you with that. It can write the content for you. All you have to do then is add in the pictures and the imagery, and it will put it together very, very quickly for you. Um, Letters of recommendation. I have been blessed the last 10 years to teach a lot of our high flying students. They're going on to amazing things. That means that I get hit up for dozens of letters of recommendation a year. And I am very much one of those teachers that I do not ever want my students to get a pro forma letter of recommendation, right? Where every kid gets the same one. But at the same time, before AI, it took me a good hour, hour and a half to write a letter of recommendation for a student. Now I can go into AI, and instead of typing everything for that student, I can go in and I can talk about just a paragraph. What was my experience with that student? What were the key awards that they won? Things like that. Hit the generate button. AI pops out a letter of recommendation that I can then go back through and edit. Again, it's going to be a personal letter from me, but I found that instead of taking an hour and a half to write a single letter of recommendation, I'm down to about 20 to 30 minutes. And if I have to do that once a week, that's a half hour of time almost every week that I've got back in my schedule that I can then do something else with, whether that's, support other teachers or support students. Data analysis. This is, I think, a really underutilized component of AI. Whether you have your data in a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, Excel file, or whether you have an image. One of the things I've started doing was when we have all these Post-it notes and we have our students do like paper and pencil activities, right? I'll have my students do a gallery walk and they'll put Post-its all over everything. I don't have time to address every one of those Post-it notes or look for the trends in the Post-it notes. But if I just take a picture of that with my phone and then upload those pictures to ChatGPT and ask it to identify the trends, it will do it for me in seconds. What would take me hours to go through Post-it by Post-it or poster by poster to do, the AI can generate that data and analyze it in seconds. So again, then I can apply that to my learning the next day. Curriculum mapping. A lot of our teachers, especially when if you change curriculum every year, or maybe you get a new class to teach, a new grade level, what does that look like? You can take your state standards, drop them in, and have it make a curriculum map for you. It will do it. It will outline the content for you. And then finally, one of the ways I've started using it this year is as my campus and our district has moved towards standards-based grading, I now use it. I'll drop my standards in and my activity in and ask whether it truly aligns. Am I actually aligning my content to the standard I'm assessing? And if it says no, it'll give me suggestions on how I could transition or tailor my content to meet that standard so that I'm doing a better job of preparing my students to be successful on the way I'm going to assess them. So pretty pretty amazing stuff we can do relatively easily now that even 2 years ago we just simply couldn't do. And in many cases, anything we can do to save teachers time on routine tasks is more time they can spend supporting students. Now, I think the meat of this and the most important part of this is how are we getting students to use this in our classrooms? This is the power, right? It's great that we're using it as adults, but if we know students are going to need these skills going forward, how do we get them doing it? And these are all some of the ways I've used it in my classroom with my students over the last year. And I am to the point now where I have the conversation with my students early in the year. I have an AI policy for my classroom, and if you walk into my room on most days, you will see students utilizing AI for their tasks because I'm modeling it for them. We're implementing it in the classroom because I don't want to be that teacher that says you can't use AI in here. And then I turn around and use AI to automate all my tasks in my job. I feel like it's a level of hypocrisy I'm not ready to deal with my students. And it's an honest conversation I have with them. I let them know right up front, hey guys, I use AI in my job to simplify my life. I expect you to do the same. Here's how you can do it and why. So as I move into this with my students, I used to have students ask me a lot for study guides right before the exam, normally the day before. Now I don't tell them anything. I say, hey, you guys know AI. Most of my students use Perplexity or Claude. A few of them use ChatGPT, but I'll just say drop it into whatever your AI of choice is, and tell it, drop our essential questions for the unit in there, and have it create you a study guide. A few of my students drop the entire chapter of the textbook in, and they'll say, make me a study guide. Um, and the students even take it a step further. I'm going to skip down on the list. They'll take it right into self-assessment. They'll drop the content of the class into one of the AIs, and they'll say, "Give me a practice quiz," and they'll type in their answers, submit it. The AI will tell them whether it's right or wrong, and give them suggestions on things they still need to study. It's incredibly awesome. I don't have the time. I could not do that for 40 students or 35 students that I have in my first period class. But if I can definitely take 15 minutes out of one period to allow all my kids to do this. I give them the prompt to create a practice assessment, and they drop it in there. Boom, they're all taking a practice assessment. Um, and this gives them an idea, a day or 2 days before the test. This also allows them to tailor where their weaknesses are. When we talk about benefiting students and making it personal, this will identify for that student exactly where their strengths and weaknesses are in that content area. And this can be applied to any content area. You can use it in English, math, science. The students can self-assess, get a report back on what they're struggling with and what they did well with, and then they can ask the Chat GPT or AI to continue that conversation and give them more resources and give them help, tutoring, if you will, on what they're weak on in preparation for the big exam. And this is just something we couldn't do on an individual basis for our students before AI. The other part I love about it is, we know as educators that feedback is only relevant if it's prompt. If a student turns in an essay and I give them their feedback 2 weeks later, there's a very, very low chance that that feedback's ever going to be implemented or acted upon. And that's not the student's fault. But the reality is, if I have some of our teachers have 180 students over the course of the day, you have 180 students turn in 180 essays, it's going to take you multiple weeks to get those graded and back. So how do we then give them prompt feedback? This is where you can use AI. Maybe not as the grade for the student, but on the feedback portion where they can take the rubric for the assignment for your class, drop it in to one of the AIs. The student can then drop in their writing sample or their essay or whatever it is they're working on, have it grade them for them, have them give them feedback. I know my kids, I'm in high school. My students kind of hate this term, but I use glows and grows all the time. And we use it with the AI. My students I'll ask them, hey, what was your glow from the AI? And they're super excited to share that with me. Oh, the AI said I did this really, really well. And then we'll do a little activity with maybe the grows. And then each student is going to get a different grow from the feedback. Okay, so every student has something different they can be working on to improve. Again, we're personalizing this educational outcome for the student. Synthesizing content. I think this is so important. So many things in our lives. And I know the adults in my classroom or in my school have said to me, I don't want my kids to synthesize the reading. That same teacher will go to Gemini and have it synthesize an email instead of reading it. Again, is this what students are going to have access to this in their lives? Let's teach them how to use it, when to use it, because there is a role for it. One of the things I love my students to do is to reorganize the content. Like we'll take a bunch of history. I teach the history classes, and instead of organizing it chronologically, we'll have AI organize it for us thematically. So we can pull out of that text everything that just relies or that talks about society, or maybe we'll pull out just the stuff that talks about politics or economics, and so we can have a different discussion. That's something that's just not possible without the AI, and it can lead to a great learning activity. And students can even pull out what they're interested in, or what they need to learn more about. So there's so many potentials there. The ability to debate the bot. This was an idea I got from Matt Miller at Ditch That Textbook. He's big on this, and he even has a lot of resources around it. But I'll have my students to practice like compare and contrast or causation, cause and effect. I'll have them open up and have a debate with the AI to kind of push them to the next level of learning. This is a great extension activity for your kids that finish early. Your high flyers that they can write that piece of writing in 20 minutes and what takes everybody else an hour. Good. Here, give them this. Have them practice applying what they're learning in a different way. And I already talked about self-assessment, but I think the last part is probably the most critical, providing students with opportunities for self-directed learning. I have students with a lot of different interests, a lot of different ability levels, a lot of different background knowledge. And so with AI, we can create learning environments that allow them to push things forward in a way that's right for them. And even a whole class, one of the great things, I know Conmigo has this, and I know that Magic School does. They will have a relevancy button. They actually have a tool that will take whatever you're teaching and it will make it relevant to the kids' lives. You can either make it relevant to the modern world, you can make it relevant to some interest they have. So if you have a kid that has like, he's a baseball player. That's what he focuses on, that's what he cares about, but you need to get him interested in your content. Cool. You're a math teacher, go to one of these AIs, whether it's Conmigo or Magic School, tell them what type of math problem you want it to have, put it into a word problem format, and make it relevant to baseball. It will write you a bunch of multiple choice word problems for math using relevant baseball terminology for that student. Boom. We have just now, in 10 seconds, tailored a learning activity to that student's needs and interests. This is something we just did not have the capability of doing 2 years ago. So my goal was to be done in 30 minutes, and I think I accomplished it. So here's my last chunk, and then I will absolutely stick around for another 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and I'm hoping we get some good ones. My suggestions for everyone I talk to about AI. First, you have to have a policy. And we're all at different levels of our institutions, right? Maybe you're just a classroom teacher. That's cool. You need to have an understanding of what you will allow and what you won't allow for AI in your classroom. Maybe you do this with your PLC, your group of teachers in your building, however you want to do it, but you must have an AI policy. You have to put the thought in. You can't just make it up as you go. You need to set clear expectations with your students as early in the year as possible, and then be consistent with them. The other thing I would say with AI policy is be open to change. As you get feedback from students and as this technology evolves, you have to be ready to evolve with it and the needs of your students. And I would say this is true at the campus level and also the district level. If you're a campus administrator, be very clear on what expectations you have and how much flexibility your teachers have in using AI in the classroom. If you're a district office personnel, this is a conversation that you're going to need to have not only with your campuses and teachers, but also your community as a whole. What is your AI policy? How do you expect students to use it? Because you're going to have to explain this and sell it differently at every level, right? If you're a district administrator, it's community. You need to convince the community that what we're doing is in the best interest of the students. So keep that in your mind. With the campus administrators, make sure you're giving the teachers the support that they need and the flexibility to use it in the classroom as they see fit. And then classroom teachers, make sure you're using it with those students effectively and you have a clear policy. And then I think the most important thing here is modeling it. But first, you have to talk about it. You have to have the open conversation with students. Otherwise, they won't know. You have to tell them, hey, this is a professional use of AI. In the professional setting, this would not be an acceptable use of AI. Have that conversation because no one else is going to. If we as the teachers and school staff don't have this conversation, they're not having it at home. Most of our parents don't use AI, or at least they're not using it the same way we are. And then finally, model it in your class. If you want students to use it, model it. Use it. I put it up on my smartboard and I walk through steps with my students. I share prompts with them and encourage them to use them, apply their own, but we model it. You have to model what's acceptable. And then down below, I just put a bunch of different ones. The different ones I use. The one I've been using recently is Suno. If you haven't used it, it's been in the news for lawsuits because the music industry is very disrupted by it. But I wanted it to write some music for me just to play with it, and I fell in love with it. You get 5 free songs a day. It creates it. I teach AP Human Geography, and I wanted to teach my kids the vocabulary of all the vocab around mapping. So I had it write me a map rap, and it actually did a cartography rap for me, and it was absolutely awesome. My kids just loved it; like they were quoting it by the end of the period. Because music hits different with these kids. Like they will remember lyrics, and if it's got a good beat, I'll just put it as they're coming in the door. So Suno's a great one for that. And again, they'll do 5 free songs a day for you. So check that out. A lot of my staff uses Diffit. It's got some cool stuff in there. My personal favorite is Class Companion. If you're an AP teacher, doesn't matter, AP English, AP History, Class Companion's got some really cool stuff that you can do with it. I love it because it gives the students feedback, but I can see real time what each student is typing in and what the AI is giving it for feedback. So if I see that something's not correct, I can override the AI. So I use that a lot with my students, but there's just so many great tools out there. What I would suggest for all these tools, whether it's Conmigo, Magic School, Eduaid, Brisk, any of the others, ChatGPT, just stick to a couple and learn how to use them well. And that will carry you further. And then if you learn a couple really well, you can then model very easily for your students. And I think that's the key, right? If you're going to model for your students, you can't know 20 different apps. So thank you.